You can't rest on your laurels. You're done. The minute you stop learning, you're done. Okay, because somebody who's still learning is gonna pass you. I did it in police work. I knew I was at somewhat of a disadvantage as a female. I was older. My ticket was going to be education, to train myself, to pad my training folder more than anyone else in my department, except for my chief, which I did. Every learning opportunity to make myself better, because each learning opportunity can lead to another learning opportunity.
Whether you live north, east, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to From the Coach's Mouth podcast. I'm Ken Kraus, here as always with my friend Jay Bolden. Jay, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Ken. Feeling pretty good this week. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I bet you're feeling good this week. I just saw yesterday that you guys won your conference.
Yeah, we still have 2 games left to play, but we are currently undefeated. And the next team that's closest to us has 3 losses already. So we've won that conference outright. We're currently undefeated in it, and we hope that we remain undefeated for the next 2 games this upcoming Saturday. So super excited. It's a great team. We're 31-6 on the year, ranked 17th currently in the latest NAIA poll. We're excited. We're still working towards our goal, and that is past our tournament and into the postseason a little farther as far as we can go, actually. So that's the goal.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think that anytime you get into that situation and get all those kind of wins and all of that, you're having a great season. It's fun to watch. I'm sure it's fun to be a part of, and we'll see, where all you head with it. Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be a pretty good weekend for softball here, at least in the Chicago area. The weather's not quite as warm, or won't be quite as warm as it's been the last couple of days, but still not in that 40-degree range where everybody is out there but really hates being there and can't wait to get out.
Yeah, definitely. It's been better. It was actually warm yesterday, which was fantastic. So this is great softball weather. I hope it stays this way all the way through the rest of the time. So,
all right. Well, why don't we'll go ahead and get to our guest. She's been waiting patiently. I will say that we're excited and honored to be hosting today's guest because not only is she a true pioneer of women's fast-pitch softball, she's also a personal friend of both Jay and Ken. She began her ASA USA softball playing career on the famed Linden Arians under the tutelage of not one, but 2 Hall of Famers, Margaret Toots Nuss, who is a member of the USA Softball National Hall of Fame, and Millie Deegan, one of the actual Rockford Peaches, who is enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. During her long playing career, our guest competed both with and against numerous legends of the game and future Olympians. Our guest began her coaching career in 1983 by taking over the Linden Arians as a player manager, where she immediately captured the New Jersey State Championship. She continued as coach for the Arians in women's majors and Class A fast pitch for 16 years before leaving to found her own team, the New Jersey Divas, in 1998. That organization enjoyed tremendous success in the ASA women's majors, Class A, and 23 and under divisions. They won the 23 and under national title in 2003 and came close to winning the Class A national title that same year, which would have been the first time one organization won 2 national titles in the same year. She also coached at the collegiate level for 11 years, serving as the pitching coach at Seton Hall, Keene, and Stockton universities. After winning the national title, our guest left the world of fast-pitch softball for a while to compete at the national and international level in paddle sports racing. She then returned to the world of fast pitch in 2020, founding her business Grease Lightning Fast Pitch, where she continues to train the next level of elite pitchers while maintaining an unquenchable thirst for new knowledge. There's a lot more to her story, but we'd rather hear it directly from her. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm, from the coach's mouth, welcome to our own Jersey girl, Linda Lensch.
Ooh, welcome, Linda. Yeah.
You need an audience reel there with the drum.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about getting a sound effects thing and to put in there, get more of an applause. So how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Been watching a lot of games here locally lately. Put the lessons on the back burner for now, and getting out to high school games, following up with some of my kids, checking out some local college games, see what's out there. And
Fun.
dealing with you guys at least once a week. I'm very nervous.
Yeah, blessing us with your presence once a week. We love it. We can't. So that's why we had to have you on here today too. We couldn't get enough of you. We need more. We need more of Linda. We need more of that Linda. So
first time I met Jay in person, I drove up to Fordham because he was there with Loyola, and I think we hung out in the hotel lobby just talking softball for how many hours?
Oh, it was great. Yes. Yeah. I was just telling Ken about that. I'm like, I've had a chance to hang out with Linda and just talk softball. It was fantastic. Just when we were out there playing Fordham, it was good. It was good stuff too.
I still use your Rise Bowl video, your Rise Bowl demos.
Don't give all the secrets away, Linda. Don't give all this. I'm kidding for anybody.
We all share.
But for sure. Absolutely. Especially in our group. But let's get into it if you're ready. I'm going to start with the first question for you, and just give us a little background as how you got started in fast pitch softball. Where did it start for you? I know it seems like a long time ago, but give us a little bit of that journey where it started.
Well, I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, which was really great for sports, at least for boys. All right. We weren't allowed to play Little League back then. It was before the first girl, who was also from New Jersey, broke the Little League barrier. And I played with these guys on sand lots and parking lots, just neighborhood kids doing baseball year round, football year round, basketball, whatever we could throw or hit, which I think was really important for that development, that coordination, that understanding of how to move, at least for me. And later got into some rec ball in town. We had a rec team that played on the county level. I became a catcher because I probably had the worst fielding glove on the team. I didn't know what pitching looked like because everybody then threw that, really slow slingshot. I mostly got into tennis then. I didn't play high school softball, which was just starting. We had a petition to get girls basketball in the school, and Title IX came around at that time in 1972. So we thought it was a petition that did it, but it really wasn't. It was the government.
Yeah.
And then when I was around 15, the church league sports were very big in my town, especially basketball. I mean, I was all into basketball. I wanted to be the first, college basketball player from my area. And I was lousy at basketball. So luckily I found softball. Most of my time during that era was dedicated to tennis. Remember, that was the Chris Everett, Billie Jean King era. Tennis was huge. And
Right.
My high school tennis coach lived directly across the street from me. And he kind of took me under his wing. And by the time we were playing, we were also coaching juniors. He also taught me how to shoot a basket methodically, which I later used when I went off on my own to try to figure out pitching. I used his technique. So I was very lucky. Right place, right time. My church basketball coach took me to a softball game. She said, "You got to come see this. Every Tuesday night, this team called the Linden Aryans in Linden, New Jersey, has a doubleheader." And I knew nothing about this. Well, I show up there at night. I'd say there's a few hundred fans in these stands. I mean, they were real stands, big stands, with lights, with a bat girl, with uniforms, with an announcer, and two aces at the time going against each other. For the Aryans, it was Pat Willis, who coached Rutgers for about 30 years. She was in that first pro league back in the 70s. So she left the Aryans just as later I came on. So I missed that pack of players. And when I finally did join them when I was 17, there was a whole youth movement. The whole older team had gone, and it was all local high school players or young college players. So I came around at the right time. I was a very late bloomer in softball. There was no girls softball like there is now. That came around later. There was only, at least in the area that I played in, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, there was only, to my knowledge, women's major. There were about 4 teams in New Jersey. So to get on those teams, you had to be really good. Then like Class A, there were some Class A teams that seemed to grow bigger later, especially in New Jersey and New York and Connecticut. So when I saw that first game, that was it. I had never seen anybody throw a softball like that. And it was all slingshot in my area. All right, probably because of the influence of Joan Joyce. Everybody was slingshot. I didn't see windmill until a few years later. And windmill really took off with the advent of Kathy Aronson coming to the Breakettes, who was the greatest, probably the best that I ever faced, one of the best that I ever faced. Imposing height, 40 feet away, probably 36 feet away by the time she let the ball go, and probably coming in way over 70 with movement.
Yeah, and white ball with white seams too, right?
White ball, white seams, a little dirty at dusk before the lights come on is a pitcher's best time. You could probably do that and visit that no pitch ball trick with the catcher.
So you go back a while. Let me ask you, did Jesus come to your games? And if so, what was he like as a fan?
We had a lot of them. We had a lot of those guys. There were guys that were just crazy about women's softball, and they would show up all the time. They would help, carry water. They would help with whatever. And one of them, I'm going to talk about him for a moment. I wasn't planning to. Tony Zapula just passed away last year. Tony Zapula was a little guy. You wouldn't even notice him. He was a scorekeeper for some of the top teams on the East Coast. He started in the 1960s. Somebody dared him to go to a women's game, and he said, I don't want to go to a women's game. Who wants to see that? And by the end of the game, he was signed up for life. He started with the Elizabeth Marauders, with the New Jersey Marauders, which were a perennial national powerhouse. One of them, my friend Angie Blas, is not too far away, and I bring her out to events whenever I can. She was a 1961 World All-American, played behind Joan Joyce. Was friends with all of those people. Left New Jersey, went out to play for the Whittier White Sox for many years in California. Now she's back here. She's a lot of fun. She's about 5'0". She was a second baseman and big personality. Yeah, so Tony played. He was on teams I didn't even know about till after he passed. His nephew sent me all these photos. He was with the Budweiser Bells. He was with Marauders. He was with the New Jersey Blue Jays. Being with and Tony, he wasn't particularly a coach. He was a recruiter before there was the internet. He would pull players from all over the country to come to New Jersey to play. One of his biggest was Vicky Morrow from Michigan. He was a Hall of Famer up there. Played for the Bells. And the Budweiser Bells were a powerhouse here for many years. And when I started the Divas later, the first guy I went to was Tony, because everywhere I went, I could go to Connecticut, there was Tony. I could go out to Harrisburg, PA, there was Tony. He was everywhere. So I grabbed him, and he was a good luck charm. Kids loved him. So anyway, sorry, I had to give him a little credit. We're trying to get him in the Hall of Fame, too, in New Jersey. All the women that worked with him or played for him are 100% behind it.
It's nice to, see somebody jumping onto it. I mean, you look at how popular women's softball is today and how the Women's College World Series outdraws the Men's College World Series on TV and all of that. But it all had to start somewhere, just a few people. So I did want to ask you, when you were playing sports in high school, I remember, because I think we're about from the same era. And I just remember how my friends who would play basketball, that in particular, but, some of the other sports and all that, it was not really an official sport, varsity sport. There was more of a, almost reckish in high school. But then, like the two teams would play, and then afterwards they would have juice and cookies in the locker room. And it's just hard to imagine with today's competitive women that, something like that would fly anymore.
That was high school. That didn't happen. It didn't happen in A or major ball. We didn't have juice and cookies, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. But I mean, it was just, to me, that was kind of the attitude
respect,
of the administration. Yeah. It was, the attitude of the administration and the people that were running it was like, okay, well, Title IX said we have to have these programs, but, we'll just give it. The girls aren't really competitive and all that. And clearly that was different. And you saw that when you were playing in women's majors.
It depends. Like in my high school, we had 2 girls. I was lucky again. I was in a pod of, there was some good athletes in my age there, a year younger than me, or my age. One of them, Isla Rasmussen, she was asked to play on the boys' baseball team in 1977 at third base. I mean, and the baseball team was good. Isla wound up playing on the Linda Majors with me and was, MVP in some big East Coast tournaments. Kelly Givens, who's now in South Africa, was asked to play on the boys' high school basketball team. She was a guard. She was not tall. And I mean, just really, really skilled. I was around some good athletes. So occasionally the athletic directors would recognize, hey, that's an athlete, no matter whether they're male or female. If they're going to help that team, they would bump them up. So again, I was lucky to see that, because if you don't see that, it's like when I was in police work, right? If you don't go to conventions or conferences and see that there's women who are higher up, they're supervisors, they've got medals, they've done some really cool things, how are you going to know if you stay in your little pod, right? So I was lucky to be exposed to all that early, which is why I say I was in the right place at the right time. I was living in the right place at the right time, because this area was just loaded with people that knew what they were doing, including umpires and administrators. And I was just lucky to cross paths with some coaches who gave me opportunity when I was a really late bloomer.
What was it like playing for Toots and for Millie? You have any great stories from that era?
Well, I was just kind of a dopey 7-year-old, so I didn't know too much. And Millie would always talk about her days in pro ball. And all of us teenagers went, yeah, she's crazy. There was no pro ball. This is way before League of Our Own came out. There was no internet, right? So we didn't believe her. And then the movie came out, and I'm like, oh my God, this is real. She really did play pro ball. Yeah. She would talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers. She would talk about training with them. She would talk about some of her teammates. Millie was hardcore. She was from Brooklyn. Her dad ran a team called the American Bloomer Girls. And they used to run on the beach in Coney Island in the winter to strengthen their legs.
Oh, wow.
And slide on the sand. These are the stories she would tell me. And she got to play for some former major leaguers who were her coaches. Jimmy Fox was one she always mentioned. And she was a second baseman in one game, and she made this fantastic diving stab, right? And she comes running in expecting everybody to cheer on. The coach just stood there very stoically and later said to her, that's your job. Don't expect to be complimented for something that you should be doing anyway. So that's where she came from. She rarely, to me anyway, gave a compliment. It was mostly like, what are you doing there? One time I left the fender of my car there because I backed up and left the parking lot so angry I hit the fire hydrant. But she was tough. She was very tough and austere, and in a way, it definitely pushed me to focus harder on little things, little techniques and things that she learned from these baseball greats. And frankly, some things haven't been taught in softball ever to me, except by her. Toots was more quiet. She was more in the background, more the manager at that point. She was more complimentary of all of us. So it was an interesting dynamic there.
And then how did that affect your coaching later on? That experience with the two sides. Did you feel like you leaned one way or the other more? Well,
it set that standard for excellence. There was yet another thing, and that was normal to be up at that level. I then went to play for Glenn Payne, who was the coach at Wagner. We talked with Kate on your last podcast. She played there. I actually trained some of her teammates, and some of her teammates played for me. Mm-hmm. So I played for Glenn Payne. He was a New York City commissioner at the time. He coached the Staten Island Saints. Got to catch Darlene Crow, who was one of the last slingshotters. She threw really hard. And after that, I moved back to New Jersey with the Linden Majors, which was a new team. And Betty Zwingraff was one of the players and a coach. Betty had a long history in the East Coast softball. She was a big-time hitter, actually played at the only softball game at Yankee Stadium that the Lindenarians had against the New York Pandoras. And I actually tracked down the only home run ever hit by a woman in Yankee Stadium was by a Lindenarian, and I spoke to her daughter. Betty was very different. Betty was very positive, and I blossomed under Betty. Betty was a college professor, was very much into pitching and mechanics, ahead of her time, literally affected hundreds of kids in this area. Very good pitchers, influenced them. The best known of her students, Michelle Smith, the Olympic pitcher.
Sure.
An ESPN correspondent. If Betty could help you and bring in information about pitching, she did it. And I latched onto that because I never forgot the first time I saw those two pitchers throwing, Kathy Matthews and Pat Willis, who taught me my knuckleball. That's another topic. Under Betty, like I said, I blossomed. There was never a time when she said, no, I can't work with you. We worked constantly. And I was just surrounded again by really knowledgeable people. Like I said, it was very, very positive. Okay, even if you were on the mound and you were dying, you were screwing up, she would just keep cheering. You can do this, follow through, whatever, step straight. So it allowed me to grow. It was very different than what I had come from under Millie. Not that Millie's just a different style, but you asked me how does that affect my coaching or how did it? I probably started more like a Millie and I'm ending more like a Betty over time. But there's definitely a time when you need both.
So, Linda, I want you to just give us an idea of what, about the tournaments back then when you were with the Lindenarians. I don't think people understand, how this kind of evolves. Did you, how did you all get to those tournaments? You guys carpool? Did you take a bus? What were some of the struggles you went through there during that time when you were playing in the against some of those upper teams? How did things work back then?
Well, I was basically with 3 or 4 teams in my career, the Arians, then the Saints, the Majors, and then I became mad. I took over the Arians because Millie and Toots retired, and I'm 21 years old. I don't know anything about managing. I don't know anything about administrating, but somebody had to do it. So a couple of us got together, and I wound up being the player coach. Remember, There was no internet. There were no cell phones. Everything was done by pads of paper, phone lists, snail mail, checks, no Venmo. And I grew into it. And I tell you what, there was a time when I was younger and first in college, I had to take speech courses because I couldn't look you in the eye and talk.
Really?
I was that shy. My eyes would tear up. I put my head down. And you know what broke that was working with kids and being a coach. It changed my life. Just getting up in front of kids and doing clinics.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is I just can't imagine you being that way, knowing how you are now and, the interactions we've had and all that, you're, you seem pretty confident when you're talking to people. So that's an interesting thing.
The elite bloomer, not just in skills, in communication, everything else. I just, not everybody comes out of the chute and, is that state all-star and goes right to Division I in the pros.
Yeah.
One of the early videotapes Michelle Smith made, she talked a lot about perseverance. That was her key word early on. And I took that to heart. It's just, if you stay around long enough, whether you're in softball or in my, police career, and you just keep studying and working and getting better, eventually you're going to get there. Rick did a recent podcast where he talked about Sarah's climb and speed, right? It has every year, she's 48, 52, 54, whatever. And she didn't hit her top speed until she was 29 and a half years old.
Yeah.
I didn't hit mine until my 30s.
Really?
Not pitching speed, arm speed, because I got injured. So my pitching career was over relatively early, my good pitching career. But my overhand speed, I don't think peaked out till I was about 37.
Wow.
And hitting ability and recognition of pitches. If you work at it, really work at it. I'm talking about every other day in the batting cage, doing something to prepare for that 1 or 2 at-bats you're going to see against the best in the country when it counts. That's how you get better over time. But unfortunately, that doesn't really exist anymore at the level it did before. Like, I think I came in at the end of that women's softball era. And even people who played a little bit after me said, well, we may never see that again, that level and that intensity, because college ball took off and youth ball. And now you graduate college and you're either done, maybe you go play a little bit on the side somewhere, or you go to the pros. So the options are nowhere near as much.
Yeah, that's a
and
shame.
You don't get to mature like you used to, which is why I think that first Olympic team or two was just so experienced IQ wise, and other, our iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, that the first Olympic teams, I remember seeing them play. But even looking at the last Olympic team that we had, there were a few people that had been around the previous time the Olympics were there, and there was a big gap, over a decade's gap in there, and they were still so good that they took them on there and put them on the team. It was just a different type of player, a different type of era. I mean, is there still even women's majors around anymore?
I know that they run. The Breakettes still have a team up there, and they have a junior Breakettes team. They're trying to jumpstart 23 and under in my area again. It wasn't like it was before,
Yeah, it was serious before.
Class A was really strong here. 23 and under, we just happened to qualify, so I went for that year and Class A, which because of the way the rules were written in the ASA book, I could do that. But we played major ball. It only mattered when you went to state regional tournaments to get the championship ball, but informally, you could play each other as much as you want.
So who were some of the best pitchers that you played against?
Oh, God. I was up last night putting this list together. All right, so initially, we got the Slingshotters. And again, when I first started with the Arians and the majors, there was what was left of Toots's Eastern Major Softball League, which stretched from the Orlando Rebels down in Florida, where Dot Richardson started as a bat girl, and my coach, Betty Zwingraff, played on that team for a while, and Dot was her bat girl. So Betty had connections there, and the league went up through D.C. There were a couple of teams in the D.C., Maryland area. There used to be one in Delaware. There was a bunch in New Jersey, Eastern PA, New York City area, Long Island, Connecticut, of course, with the Breakettes and a few other teams that came and went from Connecticut, all the way up to Massachusetts. You had the Waltham Drifters up there when I was playing, which was the home of the first Olympic coach, Waltham, Mass, who came from the Breakettes. Some of the pitchers I first saw were Slingshotters. I missed Joan Joyce because the year I started playing with the Arians, they began that pro league. Donna Lopiano was, I think, retired at that time. All right, so we had all these Slingshotters coming out of there. Bertha Tecchi, Joan Joyce, Lopiano. I still have Lopiano's videotape, which was all slingshot. And I initially threw slingshot. I threw really hard, but I couldn't manage control until Betty taught me windmill. Some other Slingshotters, Darlene Crow, Jean Fielder, who was with the Johnny's Jets of Baltimore. She was an older woman. She was older at the time. I faced her. She's in the Maryland Hall of Fame. Maureen Galvin, who played with the Pandoras. Barb Knudsen and Kathy Matthews and Rose Kalisak with the Linden Majors. All really good pitchers. All slingshot or there was this odd hunched over, almost figure eight style of throwing that was popular here for a while. You had Pat Willis was with the Arians, went pro. She was a slingshotter. Belinda Baranek from Rutgers. Roz Bostonian with the Budweiser Bells, who was very influential teaching pitchers for a long time in North Jersey. And Hallie Cohen, who pitched for Rutgers, pitched them to AIAW, pre-NCAA national tournament. Then Kathy Aronson and Barbara Nolda were the premier windmillers out of the Breakettes. They're both National Hall of Famers. They were very tall, very big. They threw really hard. You had teams down in D.C., the Plain Americans, Garvin's Grill, all windmillers. You had Sherry Davis from the Allentown Pates or Patriots. Kathy Neal was a former pro Falcon. She came back and pitched for the Budweiser Bells. She was excellent windmiller. Rita Highbow from the D.C. Metros. We would also bring in, the New Jersey organization in Newark, New Jersey, and Budweiser would bring in the Puerto Rican national team, the Venezuelans, and the Canadian national team for a few years in what they called the Bud Light series. And the Puerto Rican national team, known as the JC Dolls, would come to New Jersey, and the New Jersey guys from Newark would send their baseball players to Puerto Rico as an exchange, and they would play around the New York metro area to prepare themselves for Pan Am games against the top women's teams. Some of these games were held in Branch Brook Park in Newark, and they drew, one newspaper article I just found, there was a draw of 10,000 people for one of those games. There were no stands. They were just people in the park. And we had to be escorted in and out with the sheriff's department because the crowds were so huge.
Wow.
It was big. All the newspapers covered it here. It was phenomenal.
It must have been fun.
Yeah, we look forward to it. And then we would have Puerto Rico would come in every year. We had them at our tournaments. And I think that lasted for about 10 years. Later, we had the Dominican national team come in. One of my former players, Elizabeth Sanchez, she's still coaching and living in New York City, had connections to that team. She's actually in their National Hall of Fame. They would come in and we would take care of them. Some of them didn't even have equipment. And
Really?
We would get them out. They would rent a van and drive out to one of the biggest tournaments, the oldest tournament east of the Mississippi at the time. I don't even think it's still going, was the Topton Invitational in Topton, Pennsylvania on July 4th weekend. And bringing the Dominicans out to Amish country with the Mennonites driving by was an experience. It was great. They were awesome. They had some real talent on that team. Elizabeth, my coach Betty said Elizabeth Sanchez could have been one of the best in the world had she gotten coaching early. She was already at the end of her career, but man, she still threw close to 70. Played modified ball with her, and her, Rick says your K is 90%. So she was still chucking in modified ball. That's why we did so well.
Did any of the slingshotters convert to windmill later on, or did they kind of each stay in their own lane?
I did. Yeah. The famous story is Joan Joyce, when she was young, was throwing windmill and was having control issues. And some guy up on a telephone pole who was working on the line said, "Hey, you should go slingshot." And he came down and taught her, and she made it. From there, she just took off. I did both for a while. I never had the control I did with windmill.
Okay.
But I felt I could, throwing slingshot to me, I felt I could hide the ball better, especially the off speeds. And I could really sling the ball almost like throwing overhand, but underhand. Whereas I don't get that same feel with windmill.
Linda, tell us a little bit about where you first learned how to pitch. Like, who taught you? Did you have an instructor? Was it more like observe and imitate? And then what were some of the pitching methods you were taught back then when you were starting? And how does that differ or not with what you were teaching now?
Well, remember, I didn't see that first game until I was 15. So I immediately went out and tried to imitate. There was nobody coaching. There was nobody that gave me useful information. I mean, Toots was a Hall of Fame pitcher, pitched for decades. For decades, she was the only pitcher on the team. And the only thing she said to me about pitching was stick your stomach out. So that didn't work really well for me. At Rutgers, Pat Willis worked with me a little bit, showed me the knuckleball. I got it immediately. I actually kind of did a few more things to it that helped make my career. I would go to a park, find a wall, and just throw, and try to figure out what was what. There was a guy in Rawway Park who worked for the Mosquito Commission who was a very good pitcher, and at lunchtime he would come over and give me a few tips. So I always looked for his truck. I tried to reach out to several of the male pitchers. I didn't get too much from them, in this area. Not until I found Betty. And Betty actually first formalized the training. The Donna Lopiano tapes. Every book, every videotape, any source I could find, I hunted down and tried it. But mostly it was just me and that wall. Right? Like I said, a wall throws it back every time, gives you fielding practice, gives you instant feedback, and it doesn't complain. And I would literally go to the park alone every day and just throw, and figure out how to hit my spots, what felt good, and how to repeat it, how to make it work again. But yeah, the formal training came a little bit later. Betty would actually bring in Donna Terry, who played with the Falcons, the pro team. She was instrumental with the JC Dolls Puerto Rican team. She was coach at Texas Women's and later at University of California. And Betty would bring her in every now and then to sit with us and teach us about pitching and nutrition and whatnot. And sitting next to me was young Michelle Smith taking notes. And I was like, can't we just go through? So, so the lesson there is like listen and take notes. I got exposure where I could, but mostly it was Betty, that guidance. And initially it was hello elbow, what you might call hello elbow right now. Step straight, clear a path, get that arm lined up with the target, snap your wrist. But when you saw kids that didn't do that, what we now know is brush contact and internal rotation, we would just go, wow, they're really good because they're just natural. They move naturally. And I think over time, even though I was working one way or teaching one way later, to throw hard, you have to be more natural, quote unquote. You have to get that IR going. And I look back at photos of myself and I'm doing it. My arm's in the right place. Maybe my balance wasn't because, again, everybody was taught to, brace behind that foot. That didn't work for me, as we know now from motor preferences. But I found a way. And whether it was even with hitting, I kind of taught myself. I listened to everybody else, read what I could. But it's when you're alone in that batting cage or batting cages, batting lefty, batting righty, different speeds, preparing for that one time of the year you're going to face Kathy Aronson. You do what your body needs to do to be on time and deliver the most energy to the ball. And I figured it out now in accordance with what I should have done in terms of motor preferences. So what does that mean as far as how do I taught myself? I guess I listened to my body and I analyzed what I did. It wasn't mindless. And hey, I threw that one well and I didn't throw that one so well. What was the difference there? How can I calibrate myself to improve?
So is that something that you think maybe kids today don't get as much of? Everything is so organized and so formal and everything that maybe they do more following directions rather than learning what their body actually wants to do, and kind of, you can adapt the instruction to what your body wants to do or the way it wants to move.
Absolutely. Not just pitching, everything. How many kids nowadays will put the bat on their shoulder, toss the ball up and hit it and see how that feels, where it goes. Hit infield. Coaches are doing it all for you. Tony Aberdeen, he's the frozen ropes guy and the Olympic visual coach he was. Went to a speech he gave and he says, kids aren't getting the feedback. That is a simple drill that kids don't do anymore. They're not gaining feedback. How does that feel? What angle? If you do this, where's the ball going?
I remember being a kid and just picking up a stick and a rock, and you would do the same thing. You would, just hit a stick and a rock. Now you got to pay, $150 to get that special skinny bat and, or you have to find a dowel rod somewhere. But,
Well, didn't you throw things at targets all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Who does that?
Each other.
We used to, I was going to say, we used to take a tennis ball and throw it on the neighbor's steps, 1,000, 2, 1,000. How fast could we get rid of the ball? So all like the throwing angles would be different and you had to move your feet and just reacting to the ball off of the neighbor's front step.
Throw a ball at the base of the house because if I got it up too high, I'd hit the shingles, so I had to be low. Yeah. You need time to experiment. You need to just go find a wall. You don't need mom and dad standing there. Go find a wall, put up some targets and move it a dime and see how that works.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about the New Jersey Divas. You were doing fine with the Aryans and all that, but then at some point you decided you were going to form your own team. How'd that come about? And, what was that like kind of running the show that way?
Well, I spent probably about 10 years or more running the Aryans and I was tired. I needed a break. It was a full-time job. It wasn't fun anymore. So I handed it off to two women on the Aryans who did a good job taking it forward. I think the team lasted about 66 years before it folded, which is a pretty good run. They're still friends of mine. And I just took time off to go play ball. I went into New York City, played a little modified and just relaxed. And I found myself again. And then I found Elizabeth Sanchez and a team called the Cha-Cha's Ladies out of Harlem, and wound up playing with this team. It was awesome. In all the boroughs in New York City with a world-class, in my opinion, a world-class pitcher. She pitched for the Dominican team too when she went home. And the whole team was made out of people from South America and the Caribbean. It was a blast. And I played modified ball for a few years with them and a few other teams in New York. And then a few years later, I got the itch to start up a team again. And things slowly came together. We based the team colors on what was on sale at Modell's Sporting Goods for uniforms. And first game we ever played, we got really pounded, got crushed. And the last game we played was a national championship 6 years later. One of the reasons for the success of that team was I was much more seasoned. Mm-hmm. All right, so a little smarter about recruiting. And we landed a phenomenal sponsor, which I'd never had before. We were blessed with Frank and Mary Lou Kardashian. Frank was a successful businessman. He said, why should girls pay if they're trying to do the right thing? And that was his attitude. And I was like, we didn't even believe it. When he first wrote a check, we still thought it was a scam. And he took care of us for 6 years. And you asked about how we got to games. Well, initially, of course, we carpooled back in the day. But with Frank, we were flying.
Wow.
And Frank took care of it. He not only flew us, he flew the family members and took care of everything.
Man.
We were very lucky. So it allowed me to attract players. It mostly allowed me free reign because I didn't have to answer to parents. And I answered to him, but he didn't interfere much. The only thing he said to me once about midway through the Divas was, "Why are you bunting so much?" Because we got into this whole short game mentality, and I go, he's right. Because the top teams, they don't bunt a lot.
Yeah.
And my non-softball friends who came to games would go, "Well, that team, they just like to break heads. They just swing harder than you guys," which was something that I guess I had the blinders on. I didn't notice, because you're looking at so many other things. And those two things, I just let them hit after that. And we did very well. So with the sponsor, it worked out really well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny when you bring that up about bunting, because I'm sure you know that I always get annoyed that people automatically will sacrifice bunt when they have a runner on first. And they think they have to bunt her over to second. They've got good hitters up. I was actually watching that in a college game. One of my hitting students, best hitter on the team, got the best average, pretty much leading or number two in everything, every offensive category. I see the first batter, I think, takes a walk, gets on base, and then they have this girl that I work with bunting. And I'm like, what are you doing? All I can think of is, again, a league of their own. Are you stupid? We should be playing for a big inning here. You got your best hitter up and you're having her bunt.
That actually worked for us in the Nationals against the team that was the reigning champs. I had a girl who couldn't bunt to save her life, but man, could she pull an inside pitch. Yeah. So I knew the pattern of the pitcher. I mean, I knew her before the Nationals. I knew it. I pretty much confirmed where she was going. So I gave her the bunt. It wasn't even a fake bunt. I gave her the bunt because I knew she would screw it up. Yeah. And third baseman comes crashing in because it's like she screws up the bunt, foul ball. So I take the bunt off the next pitch, and the pitch is inside. Third baseman's up, and it just gets blasted past her. So, yeah, hit.
Yeah, swing the bat. Bunt when you have to. If it's late in the game and it's you haven't been hitting very much and you haven't been scoring, then I can see trying to get somebody over into scoring position. But just mathematically, a runner is more likely to score from first base with no outs than from second base with one out.
And my tennis players have always been my best bunters because it's not that different from a forehand. So I recommend kids play tennis.
Let's talk a little bit here, Linda, too. So after that in the Nationals, you talked about you won the national championship. It's fantastic. You retire after the national tournament and go in a different direction. Tell us a little bit about the paddle sports racing, how it started for you. Like, how did that come about? Were you just looking for something to do, or was this a passion that you've had the whole time, just you never knew it?
I had a friend that was into kayaking, and I had a small dog, so I bought a kayak with a big cockpit so my dog could go kayaking with me. I put softball behind me. I was done with softball after that. Because she and I were competitive, it then led to kayak racing. And then it led to, hey, I found dragon boating. She was down in the Philly area, which is that's about an hour and a half from me. The Philadelphia is the United States origin for dragon boating. If you don't know what that is.
Dragon boating?
Dragon boating came to this country same year as I started coaching, 1983. Came to Philly. The Chinese came over and said, hey, you should try this sport. And Coach Bob McNamara and the rowers in Philadelphia, because that was a big rowing center, decided to try it. And they did pretty well. It's a long boat. It has 2 paddlers per seat. So it's a long, narrow boat. You sit either on the right or the left. You have a drummer up front banging the heartbeat of the boat, and it's a cadence, all right? It's in the rules. And you have somebody in the back standing with a long rudder to keep the boat straight. And the races are 200, 500, 1,000 and straightaways, and a 2,000-meter oval, which involves passing. So that's really exciting. So I kind of got into that, joined the Philly group. And if you want to get good at dragon boating, you have to get yourself a single outrigger if you really want to get good. So you can just go on an outrigger. So it's a boat that you sit on with a pontoon on the side for balance. And I got myself an outrigger and started paddling. So now I get into outrigger racing too, which also leads to 6-person outriggers, the long boats that you see in Hawaii. There's an East Coast Outrigger Racing Association, ECORA, got very involved with that. Got involved with New York Outrigger, and then we split off and started a group in Hoboken, New Jersey. And we paddle up and down the Hudson River, past the Statue of Liberty, around Manhattan. There was a race back in the day, a Liberty Challenge, where racers would come from around the world, from Hawaii, Thailand, Polynesia, to New York City. And we would race around up and down the Hudson River into the East River, past the Statue of Liberty. It was amazing. Then I got into marathon canoe, which is a small tippy boat, single, can be 18 and a half feet long. The boat weighs about 20 pounds and is extremely tippy. And by marathon, I did some races of 10, 12, 15 miles. The longest one I ever did was 70 miles in a day. I did that twice. There are races that go 100.
My shoulders started hurting just listening to that.
Again, the focus on technique, conditioning. You can be as fixated on how your paddle enters the water. You could spend a year just on that, as you could on how the ball leaves your fingers. That degree of attention. And people do this for 120 miles, 1,000 miles. There's just like there's ultra marathons in paddling too. I never got to that point, but for a time, it was really fun. I used to practice. My partner, Gil Ross, was from Staten Island. He used to be the engineer on the Staten Island ferry, save people during 9/11.
Wow.
And we would get up in the morning, take our 2-person outrigger and go practice in the industrial channels by Bayonne and the Statue of Liberty with tugboats cursing us out, people up on the Bayonne Bridge, dropping tools at us. It was a great time. I was probably in the best shape of my life from doing all that.
And you did that internationally too, correct?
Yeah, with the Dragon Boaters. I made Team USA, did some 40 and over, because in rowing and paddling, you're either premier, which is open, right? You have men's, women's open. You can do mixed, and then it's by age, 40 and over, 50 and over, 60 and over. Then there's people still paddling in their 90s. So I went to Italy. I went to Hungary, Canada. I went to Hong Kong as a support member with the Philadelphia Dragon Boat. So you would have international competitions every other year, and then you would have them also every alternate year for your club. And I belong to Philadelphia Dragon Boat Association and the Philadelphia Flying Phoenix women's team out of Philly. I would drive to Philly at 3:30 in the morning for early practices. It takes me about an hour and a half. Do an hour and a half practice, and then shoot back up to work in North Jersey. So I was 200 miles a day.
Wow.
For a little while. I destroyed a car, but, I loved it. It was great.
So then what brought you back into softball?
That was around 2020. It was just before the pandemic. Well, I got hurt paddling. I had a serious accident where I broke my neck and paralyzed my right side for a while. So I was out for a while. I came back, did okay for a while, but then the pandemic hit, so everything kind of settled down. But right before that, I started getting the itch again, and I saw some articles in the local paper about a big softball center complex opening up not far from me. Adventure Sports, which is all turf, has 8 turf fields, state of the art, and they were looking for coaches, so I applied. I wanted to do just pitching, but before I knew it, I had a 14U team. kind of backed into that, and all of a sudden I'm a coach. So stayed with those kids for like 2 or 3 years, so where they turned 16. They did very well. Then I decided to just go into my own business, started my own business in 2022. I'd always been coaching pitchers. Like I said, I had several years off. Then I got the bug, came back into it. Found Rick Pauly, which I was lurking on your Discuss Fast Pitch all the time over the years. Kind of gave it a break for a while, but then I got the itch again and looked up Rick, signed up for some of his courses, got to know him, got absorbed into your PCC group, which has just, I would say the last 2-3 years has been phenomenal growth period for me as far as learning. I wish I had this regimen when I was in college because it's every single day. Every day I'm doing something, learning something new. All right. Exploring new areas, whether it's motor preferences or pulsing or fascia, whatever. And the lateral, not right now, I'm reading a book on laterality in sports because we're questioning just how much ambidextrousness, left-right, affects how we move overall. And it's not just handwriting or pitching. I just saw a very good Division I pitcher who's a lefty, and talking to her dad, she's a natural right-hander. They never let her pitch or bat left-handed. And I wouldn't be surprised if she makes All-American. So just watching her, because I said, man, she's giving me confusing signals about what her profile is. And I think there's some of that going on there. So that's a whole other area, another rat hole, as we call it, in our future.
So where does that curiosity come from? I mean, certainly you've done a lot. You've been around some of the best players who ever played the game, best coaches who ever coached the game. It'd be really easy for you to say, hey, you know what? I pretty much know what I'm doing here. I feel like, I've got a strong background. I know all these things. And yet you're probably one of the most curious people that I've ever met. You brought motor preferences to the whole group. I had no idea before you had even mentioned it. You keep on looking up all these other things. Where does that come from? Why now?
I've always been like that. I don't. Why now? Because I'm smarter. I guess smarter. I have the sense to do it. Yeah. You can't rest on your laurels. You're done. The minute you stop learning, you're done. Okay, because somebody who's still learning is gonna pass you. I did it in police work. I knew I was at somewhat of a disadvantage as a female. I was older. My ticket was going to be education, to train myself, to pad my training folder more than anyone else in my department, except for my chief, which I did. Every learning opportunity to make myself better, because each learning opportunity can lead to another learning opportunity. One rabbit hole leads to another. We know that very well. Mm-hmm. I never stopped doing that with softball or tennis or paddling. Even with hitting. I mean, picking up Ted Williams' book and going from there. Every book after that, every videotape, watch baseball videos, whatever. I think I have almost every softball videotape that came out in my era. I have them all. Me and Steve Howard at the library. We just have to find the machines to play them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I stumbled across motor preferences, I was looking for anything to help with drive mechanics. My background with I used to run the forensics unit for a while, so I have all of that training under my belt too. And I knew that gait analysis was something that wasn't looked into enough. There are experts in it. They can tell so much about you from just the way you move and walk. So I looked that up, and soon I started coming across these studies by the sports lab called Voladalen, based in Switzerland, and different gait cycles for runners. It was a eureka moment. It's like my body stopped, the hair stood up on my arms. I went, oh my God, I kept it to myself for a while. The more I read, the more I realized Rick isn't going to like this. You guys are not going to like this. This is going to be like an upper hook from unseen upper hook coming at you. So I sat on it for a few months and I kept learning more and more. Most of it was in French. I tried to translate whatever I could with apps. Then I stumbled across motor preference experts, saw a course opportunity, went to the University of Maryland and sat there, and I knew I was on the right track. I didn't know where the track was going, but I said, how could I have missed this for 50 years? How could we have not seen this? Because it all clicked. It all made sense. And the same thing with, Sean Walker bringing up the fascia. Whoa, that's a whole nother area, right? So now we're all reading anatomy trains and looking at how those contribute to stability, because we know that stability is super, super important in anything we do to generate force. How does that actually happen? Fascia plays a big part in it. I have a picture of Herb Dudley where he's throwing his curveball. Right? Everything is twisting, and his tongue and his eyes are sticking in the same direction as the curveball. We listened to a Zoom about 2 weeks ago by a podiatrist, and she talked about the deep fascia line, the real core, which runs from your tiptoe to your tongue. How does this all tie together? How does Derek Jeter jump in the air, lose contact with the ground, and still move against his body? What in there is tightening to allow him to do that? While half of his body is mobile enough to get that ball over to first base. How does that relate to when you leave the mound? Where are we creating that tension, as some people call it, right?
Yeah, and isn't it really like a series of moments of tension that kind of move through the body, and one thing happens and then it releases, and then that triggers the next step down the chain?
Yeah, it goes back to the what is the pulse cycle, as McGill describes it. It's a contraction. Immediately, so you have a spike, contraction, immediately followed by a moment of relaxation, then a second spike to deliver the energy, either through punching through a board, getting the ball out of your fingers. It's that. How do we make that cycle faster, including the relaxation part? We're exploring drills on how to do that, but they say that the top athletes in the world are 6 to 8 times faster with that cycle, can relax that much faster. So practicing relaxation was normal for the Eastern European bloc back in the day. They would put a lot of energy into that, teaching that, just how to relax and combine it in between those two peaks of contraction.
What's the next rabbit hole for you? What are you thinking? I know you're doing the fast pitch. You got the business going and all that stuff. Is there another thing on the list that you want to tackle? You've done the paddle sports, been amazing in that. Played at a high level of pitching. What's next on the agenda for you?
I have a business, but it's not a big business. I'm retired, right? So I want to do this. I want quality, and I have a bunch of 11-year-olds right now. A couple of 11-years that are real good, a couple of 12s. My oldest kid is a junior. One is a new kid. She's going to college next year, but my oldest kid's a junior, still looking. I want to guide those kids. I have a lefty freshman that I'm very excited about, but I would like to get back into the college game, something local, just as a pitching coach. I don't want my head coach days are long past. I'm a good recruiter. I'm a good pitching coach.
So there you go. Colleges in New Jersey. If you're looking for a pitching coach, you got a real opportunity here.
Yeah. And mostly I just want my kids to be able to feel what I feel every time I see a game. I cannot go to a game without having a heart attack and getting right in there. That is definitely an endorphin burst right there.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I know how I react when I'm watching things on Game Changer. And do you ever have that feeling if you're following several games? It's like you feel good. Okay, yeah, this kid's doing this good. This kid's doing great. This kid's doing great. Oh, no, this one's having trouble. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible coach. I should just give this up.
Absolutely. All the time.
2 years ago, when everyone was in Colorado, I was literally, I think, sitting on my couch weeping. I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrible. And then, the ball flies a little farther out there. And I'm just like, oh boy. And then I think it was he was a pitching coach at Georgia Tech. Marty made a post on Twitter. He's like, okay, everybody can relax now. Next week, everybody's in Georgia. It's going to be humid and the ball's not going to fly at all. He's like, so everybody just relax. It was great. But that I'm like, oh man, every year for Colorado, I'm like, don't look at
play.
game don't look at game changers.
Like I said, if I can pass on, if they can, the ones that are really sharp about the game, the nuances, the high IQ kids, they get it because they see the possibilities and they see how much fun they can have with it. I have some kids that just sit there and they're stat freaks, right? They look at it mathematically. Not that I do, but they do.
Yeah, it can still be tough. They always say that a parent is only as happy as their unhappiest child. And for me, I feel like a coach is only as happy as their least successful player. Luckily, most of the time it changes on any given day, so it isn't always the same one.
Yeah.
They find you can try to get in there and micromanage, which you should never do as a coach, but we have a tendency to try to do that because we want to fix them, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I think our job is to let them reveal who they are, help them reveal where their natural movement is, where their strengths are, how they think is also very much tied in with the motor preferences. That's going to come to pass. People will see that. Being a role model, telling them how to think, how to teaching them how to approach the mound, right? Just walking, get from the back of the circle, how to carry yourself, what to look for in hitters. There's a predator component here. You got to know your prey. You got to be able to read the hitter's strengths and weaknesses. They're showing you. Open your eyes. So a couple of my kids are pretty good at that. One or two of them are already looking at motor preferences in their opponents, throwing balls where they know the weaknesses are. So like that to me is learning.
Although that brings up another question then is that, especially in today's adult-driven game, a lot of the kids don't have the leeway to throw that pitch. They may be able to recognize it in there, but the coach is going to say, I'm calling the pitches and you throw what I call, you throw where I call to throw it, and you have no input. How do you feel about that?
So Linda, hold on. Before you answer, can I answer something real quick? Because Ken's got me all fired up now. Ken, I think that, so for me, I pitch call for St. Xavier. But after every inning, I'm conversing with the pitcher and the catcher. And the first words out of my mouth are, hey, what are you seeing? What are you thinking? What sequence do you think here? What are you seeing from the hitter that I'm not seeing? Is there something that we need to do the next time around with that hitter? I think that's coaching, right? Like that's what coaching is about. This is another thing that kind of makes me a little bit angry is that coaches will say, oh, well, you can't make adjustments during the game. Baloney. If you don't think hitters are making an adjustment every single pitch, you are absolutely fooling yourself. So if you don't think as a pitching coach that I'm not helping my pitchers, if I see them, they're over rotating or their weight's more on their front, right? And that's not what they're supposed to be doing, that I'm not helping that kid fix that during the middle of a game or even from pitch to pitch. I think that's what the coaching aspect of it is. It's not just, well, we'll fix this in practice. No, we need to work on that now at this moment because this game is important right now, right? And I think it's making these players a part of the process and not making it where it's just, I'm calling this pitch, you throw this pitch because that's what it is. A part of it is like like you said, and Linda said, being able to read what the hitters are not able to do and then using pitches to take advantage of that.
Or if their tendency is to go a certain way and you want that ball hit to third or, you got runners first and second, less than 2 outs, you want that ball hit on the ground to third. Stop trying to strike them out. Put the ball where they're going, pull the strings and make them your puppet. Put the ball where they're going to, help your defense. That's a whole nother aspect that some of them actually, they like that. Oh, I can do that. I have that power. Mm-hmm. But some of the coaches, like this is why I get out to games because I'll see a freshman, she'll have 10 strikeouts and gave up 10 hits. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that there's not a defense behind her. I have, if a kid has a great drop and the coach never calls it and keeps throwing fastballs or, changeups outside to weak hitters until that kid finally drives the ball to right field.
Yeah.
I pull the kid aside and go, I know you don't want to go against your coach, but you know it's not working. What are you going to do? Yeah. Talk to your coach, do something different. You can't keep doing the same thing.
Yeah. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right?
Or your kid's not even catching up on an inside pitch, and then you throw her a changeup and bloop hit right field. Come on.
Yep. What do you advise your pitchers to do if they're in that situation where the coach insists that the pitcher throw what's called and there's no leeway, no ability to shake it off? Do they just go, okay, here it is, go hit it?
Well, I think they need to at least bring it up to the coach, in a non-threatening way, and then if the results, if the coach is smart enough and they'll see it's not working, hopefully they'll change. Sometimes you can't go against your coach. One kid I know is a senior. She's ready to go, and she's the only pitcher, so she has a little more pull maybe, but she should be talking to her coach about that. That communication should be open. And some of them just say, hey, it's only high school ball, and I'm looking forward to getting to travel ball.
How would you say that your coaching style has changed over the years? Anything that you're doing differently just in your approach? Or, you did mention about kind of, more of the revealing of what things are doing rather than trying to direct it as much. But are there other things that you feel like you've evolved on?
You mean in terms of working one-on-one with pitchers or coaching a team?
I'd say probably working one-on-one, but you can mention coaching a team as well.
Again, we have to be careful to not have this, North Star of this is the perfect pitching form, or this is the form I like, or this is what I've always liked, and then trying to have those kids that aren't perfect like that kind of gravitate toward that, because you've been around long enough, that there's people who don't throw quote unquote perfectly. Okay. There's people that lean over. Look at Pickens. All right. You're going to mess with that, right? The off balance maybe that off balance is part of her pulling together to generate more speed. Who knows, right? These are things we don't really know yet. And I don't know if technology can help us find that, but the three tenets that you learn from motor preferences are, is it safe? Is it effective? And is it efficient? We need the first two. We hope for the third. I kind of swing to that approach more so now. Instead of trying to hammer a kid, you're not doing X, Y, Z. You're doing better at that. You're shaping over this way. Are you getting the results? Are you healthy? Okay. So how can we improve that? And we work together. Each of my students is in partnership with me. They need to contribute. I need that feedback. That has to be two-way communication. If I'm having one set up, like I never thought that I would ever tell a pitcher to drive from their heels. Okay. Well, for those who it's natural for, you're going to see a 3 to 4 mile an hour jump if that's their natural preference. You have to be open-minded and see what works for that kid. And I'll ask that kid after that, did that feel right? You have to be honest. Did it feel right or did it feel weird? And, we talk about this. Usually you see the smile on the face that indicates that, yeah, this is home. This is where I feel good. Even though it's not something that maybe match your own coaching preferences. So you have to be aware of that coaching bias. Most of my life, I'm sure I coach just like I pitch.
Yeah.
You have to listen to the kids and see what works. And it's a whole new development of vision for us as coaches. So you step back, reveal, let them show themselves. That might be the skill. How do you let them reveal? How do you take yourself out of it and try to see what's right there? Again, there's no final determination of what is good. We're still all trying to agree on that, but we kind of know what goes in the soup and when it's supposed to happen. I have pitchers that get to that point of the motion in different ways. It's because maybe they have a horizontal preference or they have a large preference versus me, who I'm very vertical and axial. And that's the way you can't be out here. You got to be here. Well, as long as you're here coming down, you're in a good spot. We get there. We get to the same place in different ways. And you have to respect, they could use that word a lot in most motor preferences, respect the individual's preference.
Absolutely.
And respect your own.
Well, Linda, we've taken up over an hour of your time. We really appreciate this. It's been great talking to you, as always.
It's fun.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us today, Linda. Can't thank you enough for just the history that you have and your absolute ability to just continue to be a lifelong learner. It's just awesome. I know Ken and I both agree that you've inspired us to be better coaches by all of the digging that you've done and the things that you've introduced us to. So I think that's great. I don't know if you're taking on new clients, but if there is somebody that's looking for a pitching coach in that New Jersey area out there, is there a place that they can find you to get some more information about some pitching lessons?
My website, greaselightningfastpitch.com. I have been giving lessons out of Adrenaline in Toms River over the winter, and I was up in the Morganville area for the northern kids. But I'm around. Just reach out. There's a questionnaire. Thanks to Ken. Ken designed that one on my website, so I can get a little idea of your history. Every kid that comes to me is going to go through a motor preferences assessment. I will not teach without it anymore. It's that important. You cannot just blindly go at a kid. You need to know who they are, or at least have an idea who they are.
Yep, for sure.
Get about half of the nonsense out right off the top. I think you guys would agree.
It provides really good guidance on, kind of.
Absolutely.
You still have to see how they move, and you have to talk to the kid and see what they feel. But it's a great starting point. And I think for me personally, I know it helps keep me from putting my own biases on top of the kid or thinking, you need to do this.
Well, I have two kids that came to me with aches and pains, arm and hip problems that I don't know if it's because of this, but they're gone because their posture is 100% better. So this stuff works, right? They're using their body the way it should be, not the way that they were trying to fit into a square peg into a round hole.
I agree, and I know Jay does as well. All right. Well, thank you, Linda, for spending all this time with us. That's it for us this week. Thanks to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels with your friends so we can keep building that audience and getting more information out there. If you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. On behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend, and keep playing.